Roger Hilton is Defence Fellow at GlobeSec. That's a think tank focused on European security. He joins us now from Vienna. Good to have you with us. So Ukraine, unsurprisingly, topping the agenda there at that summit. And it does seem very likely that NATO will commit to more military support for Kyiv. But how far do you think is that going to stretch?
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. After having watched the press conference with Secretary Austin and Joint Chiefs of Staff Milley, I'm really optimistic about the long-term commitments of NATO moving forward. It's not just the specific packages or the multi-year packages that NATO members like Canada have provided, but it's actually sort of the idea that multiple continents and massive training is underway at the moment, which I think sends the strongest message outside of the financial and physical realm that they're investing in Ukraine for the long haul to beat Russia in this war in Europe.
They're training pilots, aren't they, to fly fighter jets? But as yet, they're not sending those jets. Do you think they will down the line?
Well, I think, again, it's very important to recognize that this is just another taboo that has been smashed about allowing Ukraine to access these F-16 coalition led by the Dutch and the Danish sort of regime leaders on this. While it's a long-term process to get them going for it, as I said earlier, I think this is going to go on for a much longer period in terms of the offensive. And while they don't need them right now with the counteroffensive going on, whether it's for the short term in the long-term conflict with Russia or long-term, I mean, I think there's every indication that the F-16s will see some action eventually in Ukraine.
And we heard also the German defence minister talking about hitting the spending target for NATO of 2% of a country's annual GDP. But not all members are going to be happy about raising that amount, are they?
No, I mean, it's a very fickle issue. And as I said, this dates back way before Secretary General Stoltenberg and a lot of other members across Europe. Of course, you've seen a gradual increase in allies raising their defense spending, and some really hitting much higher than it, like Poland and the Baltic states. It's also really important now to mention that 2% spending, a part of it is also supposed to go towards research and development and capability development. So it's not necessarily such an easy argument for a lot of national governments to make, given the tough economic and financial situation. But as I say, given all of the threats facing NATO and allied states, whether it's climate security, cyber, critical infrastructure, this is really great bang for your buck. So I hope in the lead up to the Vilnius summit that the message will really resonate with policymakers.
And another big issue is expected to be Asia. That's supposed to feature quite higher on the agenda there, with the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, heading to China next week.
Well, I mean, now, as I said, security never more than ever has been interconnected, and a lot of the dynamics going on in Asia are almost directly involved with how things are progressing in Europe. You already mentioned that Secretary of State Blinken will be meeting in Asia, but also next week you'll have Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, meeting with President Biden. You have the Quad that's underway. So whether it's ammunition from South Korea making its way to Ukraine, I think everybody in Europe is looking for a predictable and stable relationship, especially as they're all laser focused on the battle situation in Ukraine at the moment.
Roger Hilton, very interesting to speak to you. Thanks for taking the time to join us on Al Jazeera.
Thank you very much.